Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session, this panel discussion on healthcare prescription for a billion. Um, I am a faculty at IIM Ahmedabad, and I work a lot on healthcare. As I can see some of my students have been bored with a lot of anecdotes on healthcare-related stuff in the classes that I normally do at IIMA. But anyway, I think when I think about healthcare specifically in India, a simple anecdote comes to my mind. This was somewhere around 2013, 2014. I was working on market research for this drug called erythropoietin stimulator, the normal drug that is given to patients who have undergone, who are suffering from chronic kidney disease and generally undergo dialysis. It's a way to boost their hemoglobin count after a dialysis is undergone. I was just about fresh from US with a lot of thoughts about quality of medicine related stuff, and the very thought of anything less than superstar quality was unacceptable to me. It still is, by the way, but the perspective is a little different. Now, EPO, whether as I understood, came in various shades of grey. Right, the highest one is available for around 8,000 rupees a vial. The cheapest one is available for 1/10 of that price at around even less than that, around 300-400 rupees per vial. Now, I was interviewing this little girl, around 17, 18-year-old, and she was getting one of the cheaper versions of EPO with known quality issues. I happened to ask her a very simple question, and God knows that face still haunts me even today. I asked her a simple question: why would you do this? The answer is, this is the only drug that gives me a chance at life because the rest of them are unaffordable. To me, therefore, when I think about healthcare in India, I am reminded of a myriad challenges that come with it. Challenge one is, how do I make sure that the healthcare is available to all? Challenge two, how is it that the quality is available and accessible? To me, these are uh, partially orthogonal to each other. At the same time, they are highly dependent on each other. I really don't know how to differentiate them. But with the emerging technology that is coming out, with the emerging ideas that I have been witnessing at IMA and elsewhere in the last few years, it seems finally the two ideas which are orthogonal to each other, scale, which means basically you're reaching out to people who were earlier unreachable, and quality are probably not necessarily antonyms to each other, but could be two sides which could exist together. I think I see the role of technology. I see the role of willingness. I see the role of the funding coming into this particular area to solve one of the biggest conundrums related to healthcare of our times, in every sense of the word. I think in order to address these challenges, as we keep singing an ode to technology everywhere, I can't think of better set of people to come and join me on stage. In fact, on this stage, I have the easiest job. I just need to ask questions and hope that the expert panel is up to the job in terms of answering them. Mine is probably the easiest job out here, but I think they are the ones who are going to tell us how technology is shaping up this conundrum of scale versus quality of healthcare at the same time without necessarily compromising on this. We have Abhishek, who is one of the co-founders of Butterfly Learning, which does phenomenal work in autism and learning disabilities. We have Dr. Geetha Manjunath, who has done a lot of work on breast cancer. I remember attending her talk a couple of years ago when she came in as in one of the events that PGPX hosted. I was the chair of PGPX those days. Felt extremely inspired at the end of it and went away. So therefore, a pleasure to have you back on panel. And we also have Kalyan, who is also working a lot on diagnostics and preventive healthcare. So therefore, I think I can't think of a better panel than this that talks to us. So Abhishek, let me, bring you in by talking about how, please introduce yourself, please introduce your startup to us, but with a focus on the twin conundrum of scale while ensuring that there is quality. Over to you.
I think this absolutely fits what we do. So 1 in 8 kids in India has some sort of a developmental issue. Not necessarily autism, but autism, ADHD, learning disability, intellectual disability, all put together. Now, so that's 1 in 8 kids in India. So about 4.5 crore kids below the age of 12. Now, for these 4.5 crore kids, uh, you have only 20,000 speech and occupational therapists. And that is also not dedicated only for them. 20,000 is the entire number. These are the therapists who are catering kids as well as adults. So if there's a kid with autism or a speech issue, the same speech therapist is looking after that kid who's also looking at, say, post-stroke rehabilitation. So 20,000 therapists can at best cater to 2 lakh kids. And you have 4.5 crore kids. So that is the level of supply demand issue that you have. Now, if you immediately scale up therapists, if you say, let's look what is happening across the world, get the best here, and let's create, say, 200,000 therapists. Now, what happens is they have no experience. So at that point, your quality begins to break. And this is not at least child development is not something that you want to tinker with, right? Because for every parent, there's only one, that child is the center of the treatment. Even as doctors, that child is the center of the treatment. So unless you introduce technology to monitor outcomes, to monitor, how do you measure improvement in say child development? So you have to benchmark, you have to collect data, you have to create a system which is collecting data almost on a daily basis just to ensure that quality is maintained, which is what we do at Butterfly. We give evidence-based therapy to kids, and we have a technology stack that helps us monitor every child's journey right from they come to us to when they get discharged. And everything is objectively measured. So we've, in a way, taken the black box of therapy and introduced measurement in it, and we use technology to do it.
Thank you. I think maybe I'll push you back a little bit. One of the biggest problems with learning disabilities in India would be acceptability of it.
Absolutely.
Right? So, I mean, the parents generally never even would like to believe that their kid has some problem.
Absolutely.
Even if, looking at the medical literature, diagnosing it early might actually solve significant amount of problems.
So
right?
I'll tell you something, Vishy. So when we ask our pediatricians, so the median age we figured after we are 5-year-old now, we have seen about 10,000 kids. The median age of kids presenting to us is 4 years and 2 months. When we talk to pediatricians tell us we are able to pick up at 18 months. So then we started thinking, what is happening between 18 months to 4 years? And we have enough data which says that if we diagnose early, outcomes are 5x better than the same kid presenting late. So, and it's a multifactorial thing. So you have denial, you have stigma, all of these are issues. Stigma is getting better. One thing that we introduced to make this easier is we've introduced the first objective test for autism, which uses gaze biomarkers to diagnose autism as early as 12 months of age. So this becomes essentially something, hopefully, that will break through the denial process, because now you have something like a test, like you have for other diseases, which you did not have till now. It was entirely clinically determined, but it's a massive issue.
I think it's huge in every sense. You actually think you change your pediatricians thrice, not to mention changing schools thrice before you come to the idea that there is a problem. And I think it's always good to see an MBBS doctor talk about technology. I'm sure talking about technology, I'd like to come to Geetha here. Geetha, you've been doing a lot of work on imaging specialties, reading scans, cancer early. Cancer is another disease that makes or breaks in India. Many of the studies that have been conducted, many of the research studies that have been conducted in the economic inclusion side, cancer is a serious, cancer is a serious fulcrum around which many of these studies rotate, because this is one disease that is capable of pushing, a middle class into below poverty. It's absolutely no doubt about it. And I think the struggle between the ones who have money facing cancer and the ones who don't have money facing cancer is amazingly complicated. And another interesting thing about cancer is that false positives are as dangerous as false negatives are. In this world, you're coming up and you're working on a technology which is trying to detect cancer and detect it early and detect it in a non-invasive way. Biopsy is a dreaded word in India, and you're trying to work around it. So can you please introduce again your startup a little bit, and also tell us again from the point of view of scalability and quality? Same question as that of Abhishek's. Of course, if there are 10 people writing the exam, they all get the same question paper. So the same question holds to you as well.
Thank you, Professor, for that. Already setting the stage to say how difficult it is to solve the problem we are solving. So that sort of already sets the context, and it's a great pleasure to sort of be part of this huddle. So yes, as Professor Bishi mentioned, we are solving one of the biggest problems everyone dreads, is that if there is one disease that I don't want to get, you always get that disease in mind, right? I don't want that, right? Because it is considered almost like a death sentence. But first thing I want to say, though I'm a techie now, always sitting in the shoe of the doctor for the last 10 years, is that it is completely curable. I mean, most cancers are curable, right? The only mantra is early detection. And that is what we want to, address. Second point, as Vish mentioned, if you want to handle high quality healthcare and make it affordable and scalable, you can't do the same thing again and again and get that sort of exponential jump. You need to think innovation, you need to think technology for sure. I will put a plug, you need to think AI, because I'm AI, it's supposed to be an AI person, right? But any case, so this is what we ended up doing, right? While of course the reason we started working in this area is because I did really see how the whole family suffers when a young lady just disappears within 6 months, right? 38-year-old, she died, on her son's birthday, and I can never forget that, Lakshmi, right? So when I started looking at the statistics around it, I was shocked to see that every alternate lady detected with breast cancer is dying in India and many such countries, right? 50% mortality is what we are looking at. Just last year, 2024, 2 lakh women got detected with breast cancer, 1 lakh women died. Rough numbers, right? So this is reality. And breast cancer is one of the most curable of all the diseases. Yes. Nobody needs to die of breast cancer. And this is the problem we wanted to solve. So fast forward, now it's been 9 years plus. Just we celebrated 9th anniversary last week. Yeah, thank you. It's been like we are at it, and I have my colleague Kamal, who is based out of Ahmedabad. I pulled him because he has to see the context here better. So we have developed a completely new innovation for detecting breast cancer. What we do is to just use a simple thermal sensor, a camera just like this in front of us. Instead of doing white light camera, it does thermal camera. Like you take a click and it measures temperature variations. And AI converts this 4 lakh temperature points into a breast health report automatically within half a minute. So this is what we've developed. It's resulted in 39 granted patents, including 15 in the US. So innovation was very, very key. We've kind of figured out a way, we still are figuring out better ways, but we have figured out a way of how can we sort of make this happen if used at scale at 50 rupees per person, when the mammography scan today is offered at 4,000 rupees. I'm not saying we're selling at 50, then he'll come behind me, oh, you said 50. But the thing is, but it's really at scale, right? It's really possible to make it at that, affordable. It's actually 100th, I think, if I get it right. Something like that, right? So that is the sort of, power. So there are lots of things happening. Maybe I'll pass the mic to 5C and then we'll talk about it. But I'm happy to answer any questions around how this happened, what are the challenges, and so on. Unless you want to have another.
Always, for a kid who grew up in 1980s, fed on whole load of Telugu and Bollywood movies, cancer always remains one such thing. The literary technique of deus ex machina is always a cancer, in my opinion. Suddenly it appears and the character is gone. It's funny if you think about it in the hindsight, Geetha, but I think when you listen to these stories, I think it's poignant at best and saddest at its worst. So therefore, I think it's a phenomenal job that you guys are doing, and thank you for that.
Yeah, for just to plug is like for the last almost 30 years now of my career, this is one of the finest projects, I would say, if I call it a project, where somebody calls me and like this, I've given talks and somebody walks up and says, I just came to say thank you. I said, like, why? If your test was not there, my mother, I mean, I'm still getting goosebumps. My mother wouldn't have detected, and she's hale and healthy. I mean, almost every big session we have it, and that's the entrepreneur, takeaway, that we get. Thank you.
No, fair enough. I think that's a very. So Kalyan, let me come to you quickly so that we also get your introduction of 5C networks. You do a lot of medical scans, medical images. You maintain a repository of medical scans and images. And I think it's fair to say that today, with the emergence of artificial intelligence, many of the things that you thought were not possible to detect using a small X-ray, for instance, are getting detected faster and faster. And there are lots of startups that are emerging in this area as well that do phenomenal work, including looking at eye scans to detect cancer, looking at chest images to understand the prevalence of latent TB, a lot of them. So I just want you to once again, and I think this is given that almost every one of us gets X-rays, hopefully not on a regular basis, but yeah, at some frequency. This is a very interesting way of establishing preventive medication. Absolutely. So maybe I'll get your perspective on how you see your startup contributing to this area. How is 5C contributing to this area? Can you also talk about scalability and quality? Quality meaning false positives and false negatives.
Thanks, Prof. Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. Quick raise of hands. How many of you have gotten an X-ray or a CT or an MRI in the past 1 year? Non-trivial number. There is a 2% chance that 5C has read this. So today, my company, 5C, reads approximately 2% of all the medical imaging that happens in the country. We work with hospitals and diagnostic centers, and we exist to improve the quality, the accuracy, and the timeliness of diagnostics, starting with radiology. So X-rays, CT, MRI. That's our job. We do this by having built the world's largest repository of medical imaging, over 20 million scans over the last 7 years, and using that in order to build a sequence of AI tools, vision language model, computer vision tools that allow us to essentially create radiology labor artificially that helps radiologists be much faster, more accurate, and more consistent. So that's basically what we do. You would never know that your report is read by 5C, except if you read the disclaimers very carefully. But like I said, there's a 2% chance that we had read your report. As Abhishek had said, India and the world has a massive dearth of high quality diagnosticians. Yes. And actually this problem is getting exacerbated. So radiology is so important because 85% of moderate and severe illness goes through radiology. Close to 100% of surgeries go through radiology. And so for hospitals, that is, it's of paramount importance to have high quality and accurate and timely radiology available. The problem is that as machines and the physics of machines have been getting better, the things that you can detect with radiology has just been, growing, increasing and increasing. 20 years back, in 2000, if you got a 2000 or 2005, if you got a CT scan, it would be between 20 to 100 images. Today, the average would be 900 images. A radiologist in 2005 used to read 20 to 25 scans a day. A radiologist in 2025 reads 20 to 25 scans a day. And so the issue actually that we're trying to solve is an economic problem, Prof, that you're probably taking in your classes, which is Baumol's cost disease. From 2005 to 2025, rightfully so, the complexity of radiology and therefore the earnings of radiologists and diagnosticians has gone up. But essentially, weighted for the amount of work that they're doing, the productivity has remained the same. Exactly. And if that happens, the only way that you can solve this is using some form of artificial labor, which is what AI really does. And that's basically what we're trying to do, which is by working with radiologists to significantly improve their productivity in order to make this equation work better.
Kalyan, if I may ask you, can you give me an example of how you would use a scan to help radiologists become more productive?
Oh, absolutely.
So that I think, so that the abstract idea can
it's very concrete.
Very clear,
so we work with, let's say, take a very, very large hospital in this city. Somebody goes there and gets, let's say, for simplicity, a chest X-ray for whatever reason. This could be a person in an ICU on let's say, a frontal chest X-ray. Now we need to immediately read this X-ray. So from the X-ray, we pull the images. It goes onto our server. It is then read by our AI. It's called Bionic. And then the radiologist, there's a specific radiologist assigned this case based on the disease that we detect. So for example, on 5C today, there are radiologists whose only job it is to approve normal cases. There are radiologists whose job it is to only see abnormal cases of a certain type. So we put them in what we call clinical swim lanes, and the AI routes it based on what it detects so that they are only focused towards doing that. So we have radiologists in 5C reading 800 plus scans a day. That sounds like a shocking number, but it's absolutely true at a very, very high accuracy. All we need to ensure is that, for example, if I'm calling an X-ray normal, all I need to ensure is that it has a very high negative predictive value, in which sense the radiologist is looking at it. Usually they would take 45 seconds to a minute to read an X-ray. With 5C, it's approximately 4 to 8 seconds. They say, okay, this is normal, and then automatically the report is made available back to the hospital that then gives it to the patient. So we do this a little over 10,000 times on a daily basis. So this is the flow that 5C runs to.
Okay, wonderful. I mean, I was remembering of a research project I was involved in, where we were looking at the CT scans to figure out whether a patient needs a thrombolysis during the golden hour with another startup in every sense of the word. So therefore, that is where I see the sense of radiology.
Yep.
But again, I think the question now is open to all three of you. Whenever I think about innovation in a country like India, regulation comes into huge discussion, debate. There's no debate that there's absolutely every debate that begins and ends with regulation. What are, according to some of you, maybe call it patent challenges. Till recently, India never even recognized patents, for heaven's sake. So therefore, there are challenges from patenting. Section 3D is a dreaded word as far as many of the scientists all over the country is concerned. Then you have another challenge in terms of letting people know that innovation exists and it needs to be respected as a culture. Getting the right workforce that works on innovative ideas and not necessarily in terms of genericization alone. These are several challenges that exist, from the infrastructure, ecosystem, regulation perspective. My question to all three of you is what are the kinds of challenges you're facing in this, and how do you overcome some of these challenges? Maybe Geetha, we can start with you.
Sure. So I think some of it you already mentioned, right? Some of the challenges. I would say, like, if you look at solving a healthcare problem using technology, right? You can think of it as falling in either a group, which is clinical decision support systems. That is, these are AI models which are helping in the decision of making a clinical decision. That is, whether the person has cancer or not, whether it has to go to Dr. 1 or Dr. 2 in this case, is probably considered workflow optimization. But anyway, and the second one, how you can use AI for better operational efficiency, improving patient-doctor ratio. So in the second category, which I mentioned, it's, as expected, slightly less regulated because it doesn't have a direct impact on the health of the person. Whereas in the first category, which are clinical decision support systems, it's hugely regulated for obvious reasons, because you're putting a person's health at risk. For example, in our case, we go to a rural area and we automatically give a red, yellow, green. Like Kalyan said, we have very high negative predictive value. If it is no, it doesn't even go to a doctor, right? Of course, your health worker will say it. It doesn't even go, right? But if it's yes, full detailed report, explained report is given and so on, right? In those cases, the main challenge, I wouldn't call it challenge, I would say responsibility, right, of the founder. That's why we call responsible AI, right? So the responsibility of the founder is to, or the team is to make sure that it is clinically as effective. And you also mentioned in the beginning, right? False positives are also wrong. False negatives are also wrong. That is, you're walking in a very, very thin rope, high up, very high impact for risk being missing a cancer, and a person is walking around without knowing that there is cancer, and the other side also. So the ensuring that the accuracy is good, and then ensuring that you meet the quality when I say accuracy, comparing with the best quality. You can compare with hand examination, which is the standard today.
Correct.
That anyway, we are 300 times better, right? That we have proven. But is it a gold standard comparable, right? Not just mammogram. They'll say, oh, if it's in a hospital, I can do mammogram, and if it doesn't pick, I'll go to ultrasound. If it doesn't sort of, it's inconclusive, I'll go to MRI. Can we go and say, we'll stand up and we'll kind of, ensure that at least we are 10% non-inferior? That's what. But we ended up being sort of good in reducing almost zero false negatives. So maintaining that high levels of accuracy, that is one big challenge. The second one is convincing the doctor that it is that having that accuracy, right? For that, I think we really need to do multiple types of clinical, studies, right? And then let the doctor give the device to the doctor and let the doctor make that comparison themselves. So that's one aspect. So only then they will be willing to actually go and sell it as a mock doctor or a intern doctor, if you will, right? As with it. So I think that is one biggest challenge, or as I said, responsibility. And we said, without doing that, we should not simply go and scale, because we are putting people at risk. So that's one big thing, I guess. And also getting skilled, sales force, if you will, who can do concept selling. It's a new test in the whole world. And so, you're able to convince the doctor that it's really good. You have all the results, explaining the clinical results in a way that every person can understand, every person can say. So there's several challenges. And also when you go into the scale, right, we want to give these devices in the hands of the young girls, health workers, and they may make mistakes. And for AI, if images are wrong, then output is also wrong, right? So you have to make sure that images and the protocol used for taking the images are like perfect. So there again, you innovate. So these are some of the product related. Okay,
I kind of have to pick on this particular argument, idea that you just floated, having the cameras in the hands of young girls to detect cancer much faster. I think, if you look at research that came out in maternal health, that's already happening, where from gynecologist, it has moved on to ASHA workers, at least for the basic.
For the monitoring. Yes, so for monitoring.
That's without necessarily compromising on quality.
Exactly, right? So having that scientific mindset, and as you said, high levels of approval as the leadership team itself saying, I'm not going to let this go out of the window or even door of Niramai until I'm convinced that it's not hampering. So I think that has been the main. Now, once we have it, now how do we scale? How do we find partners in a way that they're able to sort of explain, answer all these things, and then scale up? So that's the phase we are in. Last but not the least, I think if I sort of put it on the rug, it will not be correct. Investments are good. Early stage is good. But there is if we're talking about it, like there is a hockey curve for sure, if it's innovative and all. But hockey curve, sort of the curve is little elongated. I say that you need patience to save patients, right? So something like that. So we need patient money, patient investor money that we need. And so that's good, but people only think about revenue multiple, but there is also innovation involved. And how you talked about patents, how do you value patents and make sure that even if it's an Indian company, you can have the kind of, because it's an IIM crowd, I thought I should bring in the valuation of intangibles. So these are some of the things that we need to, it's not like, why should it be cheap? Because it is Indian innovation. So these are some of the other sort of the other side of the corner. There are many more, but maybe
I'll absolutely not like to use the word cheap. I would like to use the word affordable or economical.
Absolutely. No, I mean
innovation is economical.
Absolutely. Valuations may not be as high as US ones. Okay, we understand it's easier to build, but why should we sort of compromise on that? So those kind of issues on the completely other side of non-delivery side. So many aspects, and maybe, but it's fun, right? It's like trodding a mountain which no one else has trod, so climbed. So it's a lot of challenges every day, and it's also satisfying when you actually make an impact on the ground.
Thank you. Abhishek, more or less same question to you, but you see, mental health is a very sensitive, as we all discussed. Therefore, regulation on that is also, fortunately or unfortunately, fairly fuzzy.
Absolutely.
So how do you see the regulatory challenges creating an issue for you? How do you overcome them? What are the please go ahead.
Sure. So I'll speak about it in 2 points,
Yeah,
Vishy.
please.
One is when we talk about technology, we are all talking about technology. But in general, India is in the phase where we are still building out infrastructure. So we have to make technology that is fitting to healthcare workflows. So we are all healthcare companies who are building technology tools. We are not technology companies which doctors. So we have to look at what is the current workflow.
I remember the discussion we
And
had.
then we fit in, right? So understanding that is, I think, very critical from a technology builder's perspective. The second thing is the medical device rules in India came in 2017. It's only 8 years old.
Yes.
The regulator is CDSCO. For the longest time, CDSCO used to do only drugs. Now, for the last 8 years, they have medical devices. Medical devices are complicated. You have optics, you have electronics, you have mechanical, and now you have this beast called AI.
Software.
Right? Software and then AI.
Yeah.
So drug inspectors don't even know how to classify a
Same.
particular device or whether a particular device should fall in. So regulation is very fuzzy, which can be great for innovators, but you also have to work with the regulator. The regulator is very open.
Yes.
So if you walk in, the regulators will welcome you and take your help in classification. The US FDA will not give you that opportunity, most likely. But the Indian regulators will give you that opportunity. So it's kind of both ways. You have to take the regulator along because it's fairly fuzzy.
Thank you. Kalyan, let me come to you. The argument there is, I work a lot on digital markets, so therefore I'm intensely aware of the debates that are happening on data sharing, data-related stuff. And you guys work with voluminous data, with a lot of privacy-related arguments surrounding it, a lot of data sharing arguments, regulation surrounding it. So if I can think of one of you who has huge regulatory uncertainty, it is you. So therefore, what is your perspective about regulatory uncertainty and how you'd deal with it?
From a data privacy perspective, Prof, I would say that I was operating in a very murky regulatory landscape.
Yes.
But with DPDP that we all know is now going to come up and the government being very open on it. We may have agreements on whether or disagreements on whether the government should be out of DPDP or not, which they should not. But the fact is that at least there is now a clear act that is going to come up into law.
Right.
And already there are, many companies like 5C who have basically gone ahead and said, you know what, we will have to make sure that we are complying with this. So for example, sovereignty of all data, encryption at rest, encryption in transit, clear anonymization rules and clear rules of use of data. There is even a specific subsection in the DPDP about medical information and what constitutes PHI, what constitutes PII. And these are so well written actually that it has cleared out a lot of things that you can do and can't do. And one of the things I'd like to add is that it's almost impossible for a company like 5C to exist in any other country. It is the only country where you have such, like you said, insane amount of voluminous data, where you have the talent and the labor pool that can enrich this data with high quality annotations at a cost that doesn't bankrupt the company, and the technology talent to actually build out models. So I think that the regulatory landscape that is being built in India is very much from India, for the world story. And I know that there's a lot of, there is some rhetoric behind it, but there is also some truth in that. So I would say, kudos to them in that regard. The bad thing is that we talk a lot. Abhishek and I will say, CDSCO is very open, and I think they absolutely are. Yeah, but other countries don't care. You want to go to the Middle East? Oh, they'll say, just show me your FDA and walk in. Yeah, but and CDSCO is non-transferable.
That is where I have a problem. Indian conditions are very different from the European and the American conditions. Yeah. So therefore, to say that what is applicable in US is applicable in India,
but the reverse is true, sir. An FDA, like doctors, will frequently ask you, show me in India, do you have FDA?
Yeah, I know that.
Exactly. And so, it's a murky situation. But the fact, Prof, is that we do not have the regulatory cover when we want to go abroad. Yes. And that is a challenge. And I think the Indian government can do a much better job in making those diplomatic bridges, because in many of the cases, it's not reciprocal to us. So I will just make that point.
Geetha, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I wanted to add, one is saying this, though US FDA clearance is not needed, by the doctors. They basically say, do you have US FDA? I want to use it. So that's one. But so we actually took, not necessarily because of that, we took a outside-in approach. Because, as I said, CEDESCO was still trying to figure out and so on and so forth. And in fact, we were one of the first SAMD devices, software as a medical. AI sort of brings in this new class of devices where there's no touch and feel device, no software as a medical device. So we're the first ones to get a Class C certification, which is considered sort of
Very
a
commendable.
standalone interpretive software. We got that. Having said that, the reason we were able to get that easily is because by that time we already had a CE mark for Europe and also US FDA clearance. Then we come in and exactly the auditors are sitting and then we explain to them how to do it, and this is how US has done it, and this is how the lock models work and so on. It's not like convincing. Yes, we are taking them along, but they were able to see that how we are able to prove that it is safety and efficacy, as they say, right? All regulators. So that's. But talking about the DPDP law also, we took a similar outside-in approach. We said, let's follow the EU GDPR. And let's follow the, of course, CFR, rules that FDA follows, right? And HIPAA and all of that. So and ISO 27001. These are international privacy, data privacy. Once we followed that, again, DPDP law is a subset. And in fact, we are writing some parts of the chapter also, given that we have experience of building it. So we really took, I don't know if that's the right thing, but because of the, I guess the previous exposure of seeing the world is flat, and I've seen at HP and Xerox also that if somebody in US says it's good, Indians also will say you're good. I mean, it's that's what it is, mentality. So we said, okay, why don't we do that? And that's the best way of convincing. So that's the approach that we took at Niramai.
So I think, unfortunately, we have to end it in the next few minutes. The class schedule in Ahmedabad is fairly brutal, and I have to get into a class very soon. I'm enjoying this discussion, but I really need to come to an end. So therefore, maybe any final thoughts? I, as a student of economics in high school, I've been told that population of India is a huge problem. But as a person who is teaching management, I'm actually beginning to see that the population of India is probably population in India. The voluminous population in India is a big boon simply because you can scale pretty much anything. So if I were to, maybe as an end note, if I were to say this, what are some of the, in the businesses that are, in the needs that are adjacent to you, maybe that's the right word. What are some of the immediate things that you would think we could do? What are the next generation startups thinking about? Maybe that's a question that I would give to all of you towards the end of this discussion. Maybe 1 minute to each of you. You want to start, Abhishek?
Sure. So I think mental health, you have to solve for availability and access first with technology-enabled tools. Then the next generation would essentially see a lot more models where you have digital and physical interactions almost interwoven with each other. That's what I foresee for mental health.
Thank you. Geetha?
Yeah, so I really feel that, of course, we are seeing more and more public usage of AI thanks to GPT and other similar tools. So AI is definitely, going to bridge this healthcare divide that exists between within India, your rural and urban, haves and have-nots, even within a city or even developing and developed countries. So there are a lot of these point of care, preventative, wellness kind of devices and startups that are coming up, where we was talking about moving from illness to wellness so that we can really make the treatment affordable. And of course, use of technology is in a low risk manner is definitely feasible.
Now, by the way, I also would like to add one small thing, because we've had some discussion just a few minutes ago about the price and all that stuff. I sincerely believe that the cost is not the driver of the price at any given day. What is the value you bring should be the driver. And we published a paper recently in British Medical Journal on tuberculosis. My argument is, yes, the cost of TB testing may be very low, especially MDR TB may be very low, but the kind of cost it is capable of inflicting on the economy makes the test that much more valuable.
Absolutely.
So therefore, you cannot
End-to-end
cringe
health
on a
outcome.
higher argument. So therefore, the similar argument goes to all three of you probably. The value of a medical device is not in the cost of manufacturing it, but in terms of the value it brings in. Kalyan, I'll give you the final word.
Yeah, I would just say that, especially for AI in diagnostics, the level of technology is coming to a point where use cases have to be extremely ambitious. I think screening is a very unambitious use case for AI in imaging today. Diagnosis, actual augmentation of labor is the capability of AI today. And with that, you will see diagnostics going all the way from reactive to preventive, all the way to proactive. And I'm already seeing this shift happen. And I think that's where the future lies.
So, as we think about prescription for 1 billion people, one of my more famous colleagues, if I may, who teaches a course on animals called Elephants and Cheetahs and God knows what not, tells us something very interesting. The real bottleneck we need to have should be your most critical resource and not your non-critical resource. Therefore, in India, where if you're really thinking about prescription for 1 billion people, the real bottleneck has to be availability of doctor, not necessarily any other services. So therefore, the way I understand the three of them talk again and again in terms of their startups is how do we use technology to leverage that most critical resource to become better and more productive. So therefore, to me, I see the prescription, 1 billion prescriptions, not necessarily coming from doctors by doing what they do currently, but by actually using everything around them to I'd say twofolds, by the way. One is that the doctors actually are able to leverage their time better so that their productivity increases. And a more important thing is they don't have to write those prescriptions in the form of preventive health. Yeah. That's where I would like to end this. I'd like to give a big hand to all the three of them for doing phenomenal work in this area. Thank you very much, all three.